The day I became invisible started like any other Tuesday. Coffee pot gurgling in the kitchen, morning light streaming through the curtains I'd sewn myself 15 years ago. My husband Thomas walked right past me, not even a glance as I stood there in my robe, cup extended toward him. My son Jeremy came downstairs, headphones already in, eyes on his phone. When I touched his shoulder, he flinched, like I was a stranger who'd invaded our home. "What, Mom?" he snapped, removing one earbud. That evening, as I sat alone at the dinner table, I'd set for 3, again, watching the empty chairs and cooling food. Something inside me finally broke. After 23 years of building a home where I no longer belonged, I realized I could keep fading away, or I could leave and find a place where I was actually seen. Our house sat on a quiet street in a neighborhood where everyone knew everyone, at least on the surface. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, the blue shutters I'd insisted on when we bought it as newlyweds. Pictures lined the hallway, a timeline of our family. Thomas and me on our wedding day, his arm around my waist, both of us laughing. Jeremy as a toddler at the beach, his chubby hands offering me a seashell. Family camping trips, holiday gatherings, ordinary moments that had seemed significant enough to capture. Looking at those photos sometimes felt like studying strangers. The woman with the wide smile and bright eyes, I barely recognized her anymore. The man gazing at her adoringly, he hadn't looked at me that way in years. Thomas and I met in college. He was studying engineering, serious and focused, while I was pursuing art history, dreaming of working in museums. We balanced each other, his practicality grounding my idealism, my creativity brightening his structured world. After graduation, we married quickly when I got pregnant with Jeremy. My museum plans were set aside as Thomas's career took center stage. He was brilliant, dedicated, climbing the corporate ladder with impressive speed. "It's just for now," he assured me when I gave up my part-time gallery position to manage Jeremy's busy schedule of activities. "Once things settle down, you can get back to your art." But things never settled down. Thomas traveled more as his responsibilities grew. Jeremy needed a stable presence as he navigated childhood and then adolescence. I threw myself into creating the perfect home, volunteering at school, organizing the neighborhood book club. I became what everyone needed: reliable, available, invisible. My days followed a predictable rhythm. Wake early to prepare Thomas's favorite breakfast, even though he rarely had time to eat it. Clean the already clean house. Prepare meals that often went uneaten. Wait for someone to notice the fresh flowers I placed on the table, or the new recipe I'd tried, or the article I'd read that I thought might interest them. I had friends, of course. Other mothers mostly, relationships built around our children's activities. But as Jeremy grew older and more independent, even those connections began to fade. The phone rang less, the invitations dwindled. "You seem distant," my friend Susan said during one of our increasingly rare coffee dates. "Do I?" I asked, surprised that anyone had noticed. "Like you're disappearing a little bit at a time." I laughed it off then. But her words stayed with me, echoing in the quiet corners of my 2 empty days. The changes came so gradually, I barely noticed at first. Thomas working later, bringing his laptop to the dinner table, responding to my questions with distracted grunts. Jeremy growing from a boy who couldn't wait to tell me about his day to a teenager who communicated in shrugs and one-word answers. The easy conversation that had once filled our home replaced by the sound of television, phone notifications, keyboard clicks. "I was thinking we could take a weekend trip," I suggested one evening, placing a brochure for a nearby bed and breakfast beside Thomas's plate. "Just the 2 of us, like we used to." He glanced at it briefly. "Sounds nice. Let me check my calendar." He never did. My birthday came and went with a hastily purchased card and a dinner where both Thomas and Jeremy stared at their phones more than at me. When I mentioned joining an art class at the community center, Thomas frowned slightly. "Isn't that expensive? And who will handle Jeremy's college application process?" "He's 16, I said. "We have time, and it's just 1 evening a week." "Whatever makes you happy," he said, in a tone that suggested my happiness was an inconvenience. I didn't sign up for the class. The real wake-up call came on an ordinary Thursday. I'd spent the afternoon preparing Thomas's favorite meal, pot roast with roasted vegetables, the recipe his mother had passed down to me when we first married. It was our anniversary, 23 years together. Not a milestone year, but still worth celebrating, I thought. 6 o'clock came and went, then 7. At 8, I texted Thomas. "Dinner's ready. Are you on your way home?" The reply came quickly. "Sorry, got caught up at work. Team dinner with the new project group. Might be late. Don't wait up." He'd forgotten. Completely forgotten. I sat at the table alone, the candles I'd lit burning down, casting shadows across the meal I'd spent hours preparing. Jeremy had gone to a friend's house for the evening. The house was silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway, a wedding gift from Thomas's parents. As I blew out the candles and began wrapping the untouched food, my phone chimed again. A photo from Thomas, him smiling at a restaurant, arm around a female colleague, glasses raised. "Celebrating project kickoff. Great team this year." He looked happier in that photo, surrounded by colleagues he'd known for months, than he had with me in years. Something cold settled in my chest that night. Not jealousy, not exactly. More like clarity. I'd become a function in my own home. The cook, the cleaner, the calendar keeper. Not a person to be seen, heard, valued. The next morning, Thomas rushed in and out, grabbing coffee, not noticing the redness of my eyes or my unusual silence. "Have a good day," I said. "You too," he replied automatically, already halfway out the door. But he paused, just for a moment, hand on the doorknob. "Hey, was there something special about yesterday? I had this feeling—" "Just Thursday," I said quietly. "Nothing special." He nodded, relieved, and left. That weekend, I tried once more. I thought we could have a family dinner tonight. All of us, at the table, no phones, like we used to. Jeremy rolled his eyes. "I made plans with Alex." "Can't you reschedule? Just this once?" "Mom, why is everything such a big deal with you? It's just dinner." It wasn't just dinner. It was a last attempt to find my place in my own home. That evening, Thomas arrived late again. When I asked if he'd eaten, he nodded absently. "Grab something at the office. You didn't need to wait." I hadn't made anything. For the first time in our marriage, I hadn't prepared a meal, hadn't set the table, hadn't fulfilled the role I'd been assigned. He didn't notice. The morning everything changed, I stood in our bedroom, staring at Thomas's side of the closet. Neat rows of shirts I'd ironed, pants I'd hemmed, ties I'd chosen as gifts over the years. My side was smaller, filled with practical clothes in muted colors, things that didn't call attention to themselves, just like me. At the back, behind winter sweaters, I found a dress I'd forgotten I owned. Deep blue, the color of the ocean at dusk. I'd bought it years ago for a gallery opening, back when I still believed my art history degree might lead somewhere. Thomas had complimented me that night, his hand warm on the small of my back as he introduced me to his colleagues. "My wife, the art expert," he'd said proudly. When was the last time he'd introduced me as anything other than Jeremy's mom? I took the dress off its hanger and held it against me, the fabric cool and unfamiliar. On impulse, I put it on. It still fit, though differently now. Tighter in some places, looser in others. The woman in the mirror looked like a stranger wearing my face. Who was she? What did she want? I spent that day differently. Instead of cleaning or cooking or running errands, I drove to the art museum in the next town. I wandered the galleries alone, lingering in front of paintings that moved me, remembering the passion that had once shaped my identity. In the museum cafe, I ordered coffee and opened my neglected journal. I began to write, not a to-do list or meal plan, but thoughts, feelings, questions I'd been avoiding for years. By the time I looked up, 3 hours had passed. I arrived home just as Thomas and Jeremy were walking through the door. They stared at me with identical expressions of confusion. "Where were you?" Thomas asked, glancing at his watch. "And why are you dressed like that?" "I went to the art museum," I said simply. "Is everything okay?" His tone suggested this behavior was concerning, possibly indicative of some breakdown. "No," I said. "It hasn't been for a long time." That evening, I tried to explain how I felt. Invisible, unvalued, like a ghost in my own life. Thomas listened with a puzzled frown, as if I were speaking a language he couldn't quite translate. "I don't understand," he said finally. "You have everything you need. What more do you want?" "To be seen," I said. "To matter to the people I've given my life to." "That's dramatic," Jeremy cut in, uncomfortable with the tension. "You're making a big deal out of nothing." They were both looking at me now, really looking, for the first time in months. But what they saw wasn't me. It was an inconvenience, a malfunction in the smooth running of their lives. "I'm going to stay with Susan for a few days," I said, the decision forming as I spoke the words. "I need some time to think." Thomas's expression shifted from confusion to irritation. "And what about us? Who's going to handle everything here?" In that moment, I knew. He didn't see me leaving as losing his wife, just losing his housekeeper. "I guess you'll have to figure that out," I said quietly. "Just like I have to figure out who I am, besides the person who handles everything for everyone else." Susan's spare bedroom became my sanctuary. A small space with a window overlooking her garden, it offered something my beautiful home hadn't in years: peace, possibility, the chance to rediscover myself. "Stay as long as you need," she said, squeezing my hand. "I've been worried about you for a long time." The first week was the hardest. My phone filled with texts from Thomas, moving from confused to angry to bargaining. "When are you coming home? This is ridiculous." "Jeremy needs help with his college essays." "I don't even know how to work the new washing machine." "I've scheduled dinner at Giovanni's, your favorite. Let's talk." Jeremy's messages were fewer, but cut deeper. "Dad burned dinner again. This isn't fair to us." "Mom, whatever's going on, can't you just get over it?" I responded with practical information: where to find documents, how to operate appliances, when bills were due. But I didn't go back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in decades. I put myself first. I applied for a part-time position at the local art center, teaching art appreciation to children. I joined a women's hiking group. I started painting again, small watercolors that expressed the turbulent emotions I'd suppressed for so long. 3 weeks in, Thomas showed up at Susan's door, unannounced. "This has gone on long enough," he said when I met him on the porch. "It's time to come home." "Why?" I asked simply. The question seemed to stun him. "Because that's where you belong." "Do I?" I sat on the porch swing, motioning for him to join me. "When was the last time you actually saw me, Thomas? Not as your wife or Jeremy's mother, but as me, the woman you married, the person I am?" He started to protest, then stopped, really looking at me perhaps for the first time in years. I was wearing paint-splattered jeans, my hair pulled back, a new confidence in my posture. "You seem different," he said finally. "I'm remembering who I was before I disappeared," I replied. "And I'm not sure that person fits in our home anymore." We talked for hours that evening, really talked, peeling back layers of assumptions and habits and neglect. I told him about the loneliness, the invisibility, the slow erosion of my sense of self. He spoke of pressures at work, fear of failure, the way he'd retreated into what he could control. "I didn't know you were so unhappy," he said. "That's the problem," I answered. "You didn't know because you stopped looking." 6 months have passed since I left the house on Cedar Street. I never did move back. Instead, I found a small apartment near the Arts Center, walls now filled with my own paintings and photographs. Thomas and I tried counseling, uncovering years of unspoken expectations and disappointments. "I don't know if we can fix this," he admitted during one session. "Maybe it's not about fixing," I suggested. "Maybe it's about creating something new, something honest." We're dating now, as strange as that sounds after 23 years of marriage. Meeting for coffee, going to museums together, learning who we've become in the years we stopped seeing each other. Sometimes it feels promising, other times impossible. But at least it's real. Jeremy was angry at first, blaming me for disrupting his life during his senior year. But recently something shifted. He stopped by my apartment last week, looking around with genuine curiosity. "You're really good," he said, studying one of my landscapes. "I didn't know you could paint like this." "There's a lot we don't know about each other," I told him. "I'd like to change that." He nodded, then asked if I'd help him with an art history project. We spent the afternoon talking about Renaissance painters and his plans for college, really talking, in a way we hadn't in years. People ask if I regret leaving, if I miss my old life. The truth is complicated. I miss the family we could have been. I miss the home I tried to create. But I don't miss disappearing a little more each day, becoming a function rather than a person, a convenience rather than a partner or mother. Sometimes you have to leave a place to find yourself again. Sometimes those who've stopped seeing you need the shock of your absence to remember you exist. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from what's familiar but hollow towards something uncertain but real. I don't know if Thomas and I will find our way back to each other in this new landscape we're exploring. I don't know if the relationship I'm rebuilding with Jeremy will fully heal. But I do know this. I'll never again allow myself to be a stranger in my own life. Because once you remember how it feels to be truly seen, you can never go back to the comfort of invisibility.